they get off of work. Yep. All right, Rach, go ahead and do your little introduction.
Yes, well, welcome everybody. Welcome to the Rich Casual Business Academy. Tonight we are going to be hosting a masterclass. We have our school community that many of you are a part of, and we also host this masterclass on Tuesdays at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time and 6 p.m. on Thursday Pacific Standard Time. So tonight we are going to be getting into just some things that we can focus on for 2025. We have an amazing co-host that's going to be sharing some slides with you guys. So if you want, you can always take screenshots, and we will also be posting the recording in the school community. So take it over.
Hey, so real quick, because I know people are going to watch this on the back end. Explain what kind of guests we have coming up. That's going to be our guest speakers, Rach.
Yeah, super excited. So we have some guest speakers lined up for you guys. One of our upcoming guest speakers is a stay-at-home mom of 5 who has become a very well-known in the industry UGC, which is user-generated content. She is a content creator. She has been able to travel with her children of 5, her husband, her family. I actually got to hear her story a little bit more in depth today, which was really powerful. But she had basically hit a wall. She was looking for a way to create extra income from home. She started UGC, and now she is not only a very well-known content creator as well as a content creator coach. So she is going to be coming on and sharing with us. We also have another guest speaker that's going to be coming on. She is an advocate. At one point was a lawyer, and now she is an advocate. And she advocates for freelancers. So what she does is she helps you send off letters or basically demand letters. If you have any unpaid invoices, what she can do is advocate for you to help you collect. I have had to use her myself. I was definitely not planning to have to use her, but I did. And within actually hours of her and her team sending off an email, I was paid an outstanding invoice. So that was amazing. We also have some tax professionals coming on. We have just a whole lineup. We have real estate investors, just so many different people from different walks of life that will be coming on here as guest speakers. And the coolest thing is they're just like all of us. They, started with, something that a gift that they were given, and they've been able to pursue it and now help others. So we're excited, and we'll post that in the school community and on our Instagram so you guys can know when those calls will be.
Yeah, and I got a special guest too. Someone I met when I was in Arizona last year, Rach. So this person, I was actually taking a picture with one of the investors, a guy I had met, and she came up and so number one, dressed the part because while I was there, I kind of upgraded my dress. I had my dressing, I had the suit on. People thought I was the guest speaker. So she came up, we started chatting. So this person that I'm going to be having as a guest is also a mom. She's a realtor by trade, a real estate investor, and she owns a Sprinter van business. So she rents out this like decked out Sprinter van. Her and her husband, like I said, are real estate investors up north in California. So, we like to highlight people who are, making things happen, who are going to have similar backgrounds to the people that's going to be in this community. I got Drew coming on, the photo booth king. My man is killing it. He just bought a property in North Carolina by turning his side hustle of photo booths into, a legitimate business. Who else do I have? So we got I got my man Ray's going to come on here, who is real estate extraordinaire. Um, Went from homeless to 100 properties, or should I say 100 doors. So we're going to have just all the experts in their craft coming in here and blessing us with some knowledge. Tonight you got me. So make sure you guys, if you have any questions, let me know in the chat, right? You got the coach himself, Navy veteran, father, multiple business owner, quadrillionaire. Is that a word? Quadrillionaire? Somebody Google it for me. But let's not play no games. I want to respect you guys' time, and we're going to go ahead and start the PowerPoint. So tonight we're going to be talking about a 2025 outlook. So what does that look like? That looks like a few things. We got a new president in the House. So we want to take advantage of how we can, use his new administration to our benefit as small business owners. One thing I will say is no matter how you feel about the new administration, this administration is pro small business. So this is a very good time for you to take advantages of a lot of the tax credits and the strategies that are going to be in play for this next 4 years, and for you to scale your business, your pocketbook, your family, and everything. So I'm gonna go ahead and launch this PowerPoint. All right, so listen, guys, we're talking about the 2025 outlook. And by the way, drop in the chat. If anytime you have questions, you don't need to wait to the end. Drop them in the chat. Rach will see them, and then we'll go ahead and get to the questions while we're on the slide. So what's our 2025 outlook look like? Well, for me, I'm excited, right? I'm excited for, things to come. I'm excited for, like I said, a pro business administration. I'm excited to run up the bag and, change the dynamic of my family, build some wealth. So a couple things. So the Treasury delays the deadline for small businesses to file what is called the FinCEN, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. So this is like an anti-money laundering scheme, right? So if you are a client of Rich Casual, if you're in a school community, don't worry, we took care of you already. We were ahead of the game, right? We already got you compliant with FinCEN. So what does that mean, right? So 32.6 million businesses and certain corporations and LLCs are required to file FinCEN. So there's been a little back and forth with the courts. The Fifth Circuit struck it down, and then it was back up, and then it was down. So what I did is we went ahead and took care of this for our clients anyway. Why? We don't know when this is going to go back into effect, but all of our clients who we do business with operate legitimate businesses, no scamming here, right? No finessing, none of that. So business owners that don't comply with this face $591 a day, adjusted for inflation. So that could be that can be up to $10,000 in criminal fines and up to 2 years in prison. Okay, so what are the chances of you going to prison for 2 years? I don't know, but I'm not having any of my clients take this risk. Now, there are going to be certain businesses that are exempt from this. Now, those are for businesses that are making in excess of $5 million or have more than 20 full-time employees. So if that's you, don't worry about it. But if you're just, getting started, or you've been, businessing for a few years and you have fewer than $5 million in profits, or should I say in gross sales, or 20 full-time employees, we got you. We already took care of you. By the way, if not, make sure you grab your seat in the school community. So what else is people excited for, right? Well, we know from statistics that gas prices are typically lower when Republicans take over the House. So if we're looking at this graph, we see that the average price was about $4.06 in 2022 when Joseph Biden was in the House. And if you look in the red, red is your Republicans in House, blue is your Democrat side. So why do I bring this up? Because we know, if you're in California, you know that gas prices is a part of your monthly budget, right? So I hear people all the time going, oh, gas is this, gas is that. They have to, be very mindful of gas. Now, some of my friends that's on the East Coast, I remember going to Texas and gas was like $2, and I'm like, dang, run it up, like fill it up, right? But if you're here in Cali, sometimes we've seen $6, $7 prices. So this is just what to expect. Now, gas prices can go anywhere depending on if there's a war. That's the price of oil that's going to be reflected into the pump. But, typically when we have someone on the red side in the House, in the White House, prices are typically lower. All right, so the Fed holds rates. Fed holds rates steady, take less confident view on inflation. So the Federal Reserve left the rates unchanged between 4.25 and 4.5. Okay, so what does that mean? What kind of impact is that going to have for you, the business owner? So high borrowing cost, right? So increased rates make it more expensive to borrow money. So if you're going to expand, you want to get a loan or some type of line of credit or capital to acquire equipment, is going to be a little more expensive. A couple other things I see is cash flow constraints. Business with existing debt, including loans or lines of credit, will face higher monthly payments. So maybe sometimes you have a variable rate, and when the rates are paused or go higher, then you're going to be paying a little more in interest. Impact on business investments. Higher business costs can make it less attractive for business to invest in projects, right? So what that means is it cash is more expensive. So sometimes businesses hold off until those rates drop, right? So meaning in order to borrow money to invest, it's going to cost a little more. Okay, so another outlook we want to talk about is, beginning of the year, it's a fresh start. It's time to get our money right. And if you're a client of mine or a friend, if you're in our school community, we talk about, getting our personal bag right, right? How can we secure the bag? And then how can we manage our money properly? So I got 4 steps to help you becoming debt free. And a lot of these transition over to the business side, right? So if you have poor money management skills on your personal side, when you start a business, and most of us start as a sole proprietor, we don't have a full team of accountants and, people, treasurers. But when we start a business on our own, we typically take the habits that we had growing up or the habits that we have personally to our business. So number one, we're going to talk about know what you owe, right? So how do I know what I owe? What do I have to pay, right? We're going to talk about committing to a strategy to pay down debt. A lot of this debt is going to be, it can be credit cards. Now, when we're talking about committing to a strategy, we're typically talking about retail debt. So retail credit card debt, we're not talking about mortgage here in this specific example, right? Because a mortgage is going to be like over 30 years, right? And there are strategies for this, but we're talking about, like credit card debt, the debt that is just slowly dragging you down, right? We're going to talk about having an emergency fund. So a lot of times, we get in the habit of living paycheck to paycheck. We have an emergency and then we got to call Auntie Rachel. Auntie Rachel, let me hold something, right? So we call it Auntie Rachel to borrow some money. We call it our rich Uncle Joe. Rich Uncle Joe, let me get something, right? So if we have some strategies in order to, have an emergency fund, then we don't have to make that call. We don't have to damage those relationships. And then number four, know when to ask for help. Now, when we talk about knowing when to ask for help, we're talking about help from that credit card or that financial institution, not Uncle Joey. Okay. So we know Uncle Joey is running it up. Auntie Rach got that bag, but we're not trying to damage relationships. And a lot of times, when I talk about, borrowing money, and when you talk about borrowing money with family, you might as well come up with the mindset of giving that money away, because sometimes you damage relationships with the loans, and then you see that person at Thanksgiving dinner and they kind of looking sideways or they don't show up. So I always say mitigate your family tax. And what does that mean? That means sliding mom money every 2 weeks, whatever that is, right? Getting her subsidized from the lifestyle of you and your wife or whatever that might be. Okay, so here we go. So how do I know what I owe? So if you book me for a lifestyle analysis, and if you're in the school community, you're able to unlock this. But on the surface, what I would do is I would print out, my bank statements. Okay, and so when I'm printing out my bank statements, I want to look at my habits of, what I do during my lifestyle. Okay, so I want to look at, what kind of expenses do I have? Do I have the tendency to, stop in 7-Eleven and grab something every day? Am I making, retail purchases at Nike? So when I'm looking at this, the first thing I want to do is obviously we want to look for the interest rate. So if you can see right here, we got the interest rate. It's 13.99. So that is the amount of, tax, so to speak, that I'm paying. So the bank is charging me 13.99 to borrow money. I see that there's, fees involved. So annually, this person has spent $319.24 in fees for borrowing money. So that could be, like a month of your car note. If we had a zero balance, we could save that 319 bucks. So first step you want to do, you want to print out your bank statements. And, a lot of times when we see this information, our stomach drops. It's like, oh man, like I've been irresponsible. I've been, at 7-Eleven too much, buying garbage. I've been, at Nike running it up, buying all the sneakers. I've been doing, a lot of irresponsible things. And it's not to say you can't buy Nikes, but when we look at your bank statements and you've been at Nike 3 times a week, right? Trying to be a shoe collector, knowing you got a real job and you're not collecting anything, you're not flipping anything, you're just spending. That tells us, areas that we could kind of pull back. Now, you'll hear people go, "Oh, I'll just cut off my coffee." Well, saving $7 a month is not going to really change the direction of your finances. Now, maybe you don't want to be amped up on caffeine, but the little purchases like, I'm gonna be honest with you, oh, Starbucks, and that's not gonna really make a difference. Now, going to the restaurants, I see this one over here. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 restaurant visits. Maybe start cooking at home. Maybe start, pre-planning and meal prepping, right? So what you're doing, you're gonna have to trade some time. And yes, it's gonna suck on the beginning. You're gonna have to come up with a strategy and a menu. But this is gonna really help you pull back and get your finances in order. Now, it's not saying you have to always quit eating out, but it's saying if you at the end of the month you got 20 cents in your bank, we got to cut the umbilical cord somewhere. Okay, so if you're in the school community, you have access to this lifestyle analysis. So this is basically your budget, right? So how do I do this? So income number one, I'm a consultant. Income number two, I run a photo booth. Income number three, I'm an investor getting passive income from, 3 different areas. Income number four, I own a small business, a car wash maybe, and I'm going to fill that in under January, my 4 income sources, and then it's going to give me a total. And then under the expenses, you're going to see, your most common expenses, right? Number one is most people's rent, right? Rent or mortgage, where you live is usually the highest. Number two, depending on, when you got your car, it's usually your car payment. Number three is your insurance and so on and so forth. So what this does is just gives you an idea of knowing what you owe, knowing where your money goes, right? So if I own 10,000, if I make $10,000 a month, and then every month my expenses are $11,000, it's going to reflect on this sheet, right? So then the next month in February, it's going to tell me that, okay, so yeah, my basic expenses are only 3,000, but I'm spending another 8,000 in the streets, right? Living it up. So if you're in the school community, make sure you grab this sheet, download it. This is going to be a great tool and resource to help you get your money right. Right? So my goal with this sheet is to help my clients, my friends, and all my community members, stop living paycheck to paycheck, right? So this will be like the equivalent of when your grandmother and your great grandmother used to balance her checkbook. But this is going to give you the full scope of your whole household. Now, what the cool thing is you can make a copy of this and use it for your business, right? So you can actually have the expenses for, your home business and your home. If you look at the bottom, daily living expenses, right? Groceries are expensive. I know that takes a big chunk out of a lot of our budgets, but do we actually know how much we're spending on groceries? Do you need that grass-fed, organic, vegan, gluten-free, natural bottle of water? Or can you just go and buy a giant gallon and refill it at the water station, right? So we just want to come up with smart and actionable ways to kind of deviate from a lot of the habits that we learned from our parents and stuff like that. Okay, so we talked about debt, right? So let's say I got some debt, right? What are my strategies for debt? So the debt snowball method. And what is the debt snowball method? Let me move myself out the way. So the debt snowball method works. Now, it was popularized by Dave Ramsey. Shout out to Dave Ramsey. Um, so for many people, it doesn't include your mortgage, but it typically has a lower interest rate than other debts, right? So some people prefer to keep their debt and use extra funds towards investment and higher rates of return. So a couple things, it can be motivating, it's easy to follow. That's some of the pros. Some of the cons, you may not save on the maximum interest and it can take longer. So what does that debt snowball look like? So what it looks like, if you have 5 debts, it means tackling the debt with the smallest balance. Okay, so when we break down some of the cons of tackling, something with the smallest balance, means that the interest rate could be higher. So you'll pay a little more in interest, but you're going to be knocking this out a little faster. That makes sense? So that's how the motivating factor is, right? So you got 3 debts, one at 100, one at 200, one at 1,000. Now you're making the minimum payment on the other two, and then you make the maximum payment or whatever you can allocate towards that $100 balance and knock that out. So it's a little more motivating, right? So you're still paying a little more in interest on the top 2 debts, because those have a higher interest rate. But for the average person who, doesn't have the best relationship with money, it's going to be a little more motivating. You're like, okay, dang, I knocked that out in, 60 days. I'm feeling good about myself. Now let me move to debt number 2. So that's the snowball method. Oh, let's go back. Getting ahead of ourselves. So, okay, the other method is the debt avalanche. So how's the avalanche strategy work? Add up the minimums you must pay, order from the highest interest rate to the lowest. So now you're tackling that highest interest rate. So when we looked at those bank statements, it was at a 13.99. So if that's the highest interest rate, I'm going to knock that one out first. And why is that? Because then I'm going to save on the amount of interest that I pay back to the bank. So you can put towards your debt each month to accelerate your payoff. Put that amount towards your account with the highest interest rate each month until you wipe out that debt. Then repeat the process with the debt carrying the next highest interest rate. So the first one, the debt snowball, we're looking at the balances. We're tackling low balance to high balance. Avalanche approach, we're tackling high interest rate to the low interest rate. So pros and cons. Let's talk about some pros. It reduces the total interest paid. So you're not paying the bank back as much money. Another pro, less time spent getting out of debt. Now here's some of the cons. It targets the interest rate rather than high balances. And it requires discipline, because when you're tackling something with the highest interest rate, you just chiseling away. So it could take a lot longer. So it puts you in a position where, number one, you got to buckle down. And with that discipline, you got to be really locked in, because you're going to see that balance slowly, slowly chip away. But as we know with an avalanche, it starts off slow, and then as it starts to get momentum, it's racing full speed. So like with the discipline and the consistency, it's a good way for you to, not make the same mistakes in the future. Okay, so starting an emergency fund. So emergency fund is a savings account set aside for specific or unexpected expenses or financial emergencies. This could be medical bills, car repairs, you lose a job. It acts as a financial safety net for unforeseen costs. So a couple questions I always get is, well, how do I start my emergency fund? I don't have $6,000 to dump in an account and just watch it, sit there. So I always say, start with, first we got to calculate how much money we're making. First we got to calculate, our expenses, and that refers back to the beginning slides. Okay, so now we know how much we're making. We know what our expenses are. We know how much we make every week or two, whatever that frequency is that we get paid. Now let's start to come up with a plan. So let's start off with a 2-week emergency plan, right? And now I was able to accumulate a 2-week emergency plan without touching it, without being tempted to, spend the money. Now let's work on a 4-week. So we've already, built up the consistency to save for 2 weeks. Now let's take that 2 weeks and do another 2 weeks. And now we got a month full of emergency fund. Okay, so now I got the discipline, my bills are paid down. I've been putting that extra money towards that month emergency plan. Now let's aim for 6 weeks and 8 weeks. So you got to find the frequency that works best for you and your family. Some people gonna be able to dump 10, 15, 20K into an emergency fund and watch it sit there. For others, you might have to build that up slowly. So what I recommend, like I said, start off with a week or two. Most of us get paid every 2 weeks. Start off with week 1 and week 2. Now I got a 2-week emergency fund and then build up to 6 weeks. Now we want to build up to 3 to 6 months of emergency fund. So when those unexpected bills come up, not calling Uncle Joe, Auntie Rach, she ain't text you back because she already know what's up. And then we're living a little more comfortable. All right, so last point. Don't, don't be too shy to ask for help. So if you can see the illustration, it says, imagine playing Monopoly and never buying any assets or investments that generate income. Imagine you just went around the board collecting $200, giving your money to the rich and trying to stay out of jail. That is how most people live their life. So what does that mean? That means that, the average person, you know, we don't have financial literacy. We weren't taught it in school. Most of the times our parents didn't have the best relationship with money or financial literacy. Most people are living paycheck to paycheck statistically. Most people have shop credit. Most people are paying 750 to 850 for a credit for a car note. So what it means is anytime you're in distress, make sure you reach out to whoever is supplying your credit. So if that's Bank of America or Wells Fargo, make sure you pick up the phone, right? And we talked about this last week on the call. Make sure you call him and you give them as much information as you're comfortable giving them. Hey, I just got laid off. Is there any way that I can, get my credit card bill is due in 2 days. Can I get that extended another 15 days until I get paid or whatever the situation is? But the thing you want to do, the credit card companies, they still want your business. They're making money off of you. What they don't want is you not to pay. And then also, you don't want to ding your credit for something that you can necessarily have a control over. So I think that's it. I'm going to hand it over to Rach. Rach is going to talk about the school community. We'll go ahead and come off the PowerPoint, and then we will open up for questions and comments. So back to you, Rach.
That was awesome. Thank you so much. I got I'm a note taker. So they say the money makers are the note takers. So I got a lot of notes. I really loved your 4 points. So number one, knowing what you owe. Number two, commit to a payoff strategy. I know that that is something I would definitely say it's such a, like the first word, commit. You definitely want to commit to it and have an unwavering. I think that for a lot of us, and one thing I love about this school community and just the way that you teach is that we really get to work to have a, better relationship with money. And believe it or not, so many of us, our relationship with money was actually not really developed by us. It was, just ingrained in us as children. And, when you think of just in the world, how they say, like, I remember being at a conference and he was like, money doesn't grow on. And then the whole entire, like thousands of people in the room were like, trees, and money is the root of all evil, and everybody like just in sync would say these things. And of course we can idolize money. There's other things when it comes to that, but it's really just making sure that You understand that money is a tool and it's meant to be it's a currency. It's meant to be in current, right? So for a lot of us, when it comes to debt, for example, and I could just share a personal story, is recently I have become the power of attorney for my parents, and I'm going to be helping them with their finances. And I don't know about a lot of you guys. There's kind of just this relationship with finances when it comes to our parents. I know we hear, I think it's just kind of our generation where we hear, like I want to retire my parents. I want to, buy them a house. I want to do these things. And for a long time, I personally felt a very heavy burden. And I would always tell Eddie, like, I want to help my parents. Like, I want to help them financially. And he would always just, again, as a consultant, like he can really, one thing I love about you, Eddie, is that you can remove emotion and really show up as a consultant even when it has to do with family, even as your wife and business partner. I was telling my sister the other day, I said, well, no, like when we're business partners, we're business partners. Like it is not even, we um have attended many business meetings, and people will be like, wait, your husband and wife, I would have never known. And it's because when you're representing for a business, a lot of the times you do show up as like, we're business partners. And why I just want to share that is that I felt that burden, like I'm not able to help them. And recently, what I discovered was that I was never actually meant to help them financially. I wasn't meant to put money in their pockets. I was meant to educate them when it comes to behaviors. Because at the end of the day, when you look at athletes, when you look at people that win the lottery, the reason why they don't make the good behaviors or they don't make the good decisions. You talked about buying all the Nikes, buying all the purses, buying all the houses, doing all of these things, is that they don't have the right behaviors and they don't have the right tools, right? And so I just loved, how you just shared on that. Don't ignore your emergency fund. I know that for a lot of us, and again, your relationship with money, some of us don't put aside. I know for myself, sometimes I wouldn't put aside like $10 because I'd be like, well, it doesn't make sense. But it's again that avalanche effect that you talked about is like, listen, it might take a minute to pick up, but once it picks up, you have an avalanche. And then knowing when to ask for help. So I want to show you guys something really quick. He did share the lifestyle analysis. So in our school community, we actually have a monthly challenge going on right now. And the first place winner is going to get a one-on-one lifestyle analysis. And this will be for your personal and business. It is, such a gift. It is definitely confronting. Like Eddie said, you are going to see like, dang, maybe I don't need to, one thing I hear a lot is like, oh, I don't have the money for that. And then once you kind of do the lifestyle analysis, you realize like, oh, actually, I didn't realize that I was spending so much eating out on the month or, again, you get to really like step outside your frame and see where your money is going. And it's just, again, I put in the comment, it's a total game changer. Second place is going to get a one-on-one with Eddie, and then third place is going to get a group call. So definitely make sure you guys go into the school community, download the lifestyle analysis. It is a budget tracker. It is an Excel spreadsheet. It calculates everything for you. All you got to do is input your numbers. I love how you shared that it can be not only a personal budget tracker or a lifestyle tracker, we'll call it a lifestyle tracker, but also a business tracker. So again, you want to know, where your money is going. So that's really exciting. Do we have any questions? Anybody have questions on what Eddie shared?
Hey, and before anybody unmutes real quick, and I know sometimes, when we're the responsible person in the family or the person who is, the one that went to college or owns their own business, sometimes we're looked at as the successful one, and there's a lot of pressure, from the outside and pressure within to help everyone. But I will say that, sometimes we can't subsidize our parents or the generation before us irresponsible behaviors. And I'm not talking about people who are sick or got injured or, they need our help, but people who are, irresponsible. I like to say running in the victim Olympics, right? It's not really our responsibility because what that does, for myself, let's use myself for an example, or let's use athletes. A lot of times the previous generation is looking for the current generation to save them, to bring them to prosperity. But what that does is set that person's own family, right? So if the athlete is looking to start their own family, now they're a little step behind because they're still taking care of the previous generation who decided to be irresponsible. So like I said, I know it's a little, you know, pressure, but like I always say, make sure you pay attention to your family tax, right? Make sure that the family tax is not exhausting with you and your wife or your significant other, the amount of income that you're bringing in. So let's do a quick roundtable if anyone has any questions. By the way, if you're watching this, make sure you drop some questions down below. I know Camila left the chat, but she said she needed help strategizing your debt. And that's one of the first things is like, don't be afraid to reach out to someone who's better than you in the area, right? I was telling Jordan, yesterday, I'm like, listen, dude, the reason you had a basketball coach is because he brought certain expertise that you didn't necessarily know, right? He's making you better in other areas. So when you're approaching this, tackling debt, strategizing for your business, look at it as like your basketball or your soccer coach. If you're a goalie, you probably have a goalie coach, right? So when when we're being transparent and we're looking at the bills, just think of me as your basketball coach. You're good at dunking and layups, but you can't shoot free throws. So I'm helping you, shoot free throws. Okay, so that's a great question. So Joe is in the chat. He says, is it wise to sacrifice a hefty account versus paying down debt? So yesterday we talked, Rachel and I had a private conversation offline. Well, it wasn't private, it just wasn't online. And she talked about arbitrage. So here's how you look at that. There's something called a negative arbitrage, right? So if I'm paying 30% in debt and I'm getting 10% of, profit from my investments or my savings account, I'm in a negative arbitrage. So I'm losing 20% of my money because 30% of that is going to bad debt. So what I would look at is, what is the interest rate on that debt you have? How big is that balance? And then just come up with a strategy to knock that debt out. So if you got, you got 10K sitting in a savings account getting 0.01 and you got 5,000 in credit card debt at 30%, you're at a negative 30% arbitrage, meaning every month you're losing 30% of your dollar value. So that was a great question. Thank you for asking that. It's crazy how that was just spot on of our conversation last night, Rach.
Yeah, so in that case, let's say for example, so the a 10% and a 30%, right? You're obviously at a negative. In that case, do you suggest like you then take that 10K and you pay off like let's say it's 5K, I think you mentioned, like do you then take all the money to that? Like how does one come up with the proper strategy? Because I know that a lot of the times there's emotion when we're making these decisions, and so we sometimes, like, again, we have no emergency fund, but then we take all of the savings that we had, let's say, so say you have a savings account that's 10,000 and you have 5,000 that's owed in debt. I guess your numbers, and you're the number guy, so you can explain this probably better. But then do I take, the 5,000? Like, what if I only had 5,000 in savings, but I had 5,000 in debt? Would I then take the five and then I'm at 0 and 0? Like, at what point do I keep some of my, like, how I don't know when to keep my emergency fund. I don't know what to do. And I feel that sometimes that's why people don't actually get out of the situations they're in. And I think, number 4, know when to ask for help. I think now I'm asking for help. Like, and I'm just giving examples. I'm not actually saying this is me, but like, what
Mm.
would I do in that case? Like,
So one thing I would say is not to take, that lump sum of your savings, that hefty savings account, and put it all towards debt. And there's a couple reasons why. Because we talked about an emergency fund, medical. If you're in Cali, there was fires, right? Some people didn't have an emergency fund for the fires. So I would not exhaust my full savings account to knock down that debt. What I would do is, obviously print out my bank statements and come up with a strategy on how to knock that debt out. Also, I mean, you could book the discovery call, do the lifestyle analysis. If you're in the school community, that's one of the perks of being in the school community is you're going to get the ability to reach out to not only myself, but, some of my, peers who are experts in that area. But I wouldn't put my whole life savings to pay off that debt and then I'd be stuck with zero. And not saying you would be stuck with zero, but you would be stuck with waiting on the next 2 weeks or whatever your pay frequency is. It says I put away most in my Roth, but as a contractor, I also have liquidity. Okay, and so things to remember about your Roth. So there's also tax implications with the Roth. Now with the Roth, here's what you can do. So you can invest, say I invest 5,000 into my Roth and I get, 2,500 in profit. So that gives me 7,500 total. What you can do with a Roth is you can pull out your initial investment of 5,000 penalty free without, the serious tax implications and the capital gains. Now, if you pull out the profit you made, that's when you incur all the penalties. So that's something to keep in mind. But yeah, always having liquidity, if that's cash, if that's crypto or whatever that portfolio looks like. But I really want, that was a great question, by the way, but having that focus and coming up with a strategy, right? So maybe you don't know, make sure you reach out to me and let's get you a strategy, right? So even if it takes 6 months or whatever pay frequency it takes, let's at least come up with a strategy other than, you know, paying up 300 and then spending 400. We just worked with a client who was, they were spending 2,600 on the credit card, but only paying 21. So they were, spending holding an additional $300 balance, at a 15, 16, 17% interest rate. So great question, my guy. Yep, make sure you reach out to me. You know how to get a hold of me. The best way is to book a discovery call, or buy me dinner. We can you buy me dinner, you got all the questions and answers. I got to give you the whole arsenal. Anything else you got for me, Rach?
yes, how can we find the school community
Well,
and your
that's a great
discovery
question.
call?
Okay, so there's a couple ways. You can definitely tap into my Instagram. There's a link to get a hold of the school community. And then also, if you need to book a discovery call, let me show you this slide right here. This is what I want you guys to focus on is, reaching out this way. Here we go. All right, so you could join the community. You could always go to richcasual.com. There's a couple links there. There's a link to book a free discovery call. There's a client intake form you can fill out. You can also go that way. You could also send an email to admin@richcasual.com. That'll go to our team. I'll get to see that. And then, it's a good way to get involved with myself and the community. One thing I like about the school community is there's not just me giving feedback to these different situations, but there's a bunch of other members who kind of give their expertise and weigh in on, what's going on. So that's what I would have to add. Do you have anything else, Rach, you want to add?
No, I'm really excited. So if you guys book your discovery call, once you guys are in action and you choose between the debt snowball, maybe the debt avalanche, definitely make sure that you post your results. I know that I have done both of those strategies before. So check out the lifestyle analysis. Let us know how you add that to your routine, whether that be your family lifestyle. But again, it is really awesome that you can just input the numbers. It's already done for you. It's an Excel spreadsheet. It automates. You don't have to do all of the extra. It's monthly. And yeah, really just excited to see everybody take action and start getting some great results.
You know what? As a matter of fact, real quick, let me go ahead and I want to pull this up really quick. And I want to show everybody how easy it is to input some information onto the lifestyle analysis. So I'm going to go ahead and type this in really quick. Budget, Google Sheets. So I think it'll be a little more if we could show people exactly what it does, might be able to get a
Hmm.
little more value from it. Okay, let me go ahead and share my screen really quick.
Yeah, and I would even say if you're somebody who's like, you're like, oh no, Excel, I've never used Excel, or I'm not an Excel user, it's super user friendly.
Yeah, it does all the work for you.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what you're going to access from the file in the school community. Let's go ahead and let's say I make $5,000 a month in my primary. My second, I own a vending machine business. I'm making 234. My wife has a job, or my wife has, my wife works full time, and she brings home 46.53. And then we have an income property that's bringing in, $167. Okay, so basically with that, we make it $9,000 a month. And then our rent or mortgage, we live in a nice neighborhood in a one bedroom, right? We pay, 3,500. We drive the nicest car. It costs 1,200. And then let's see, insurance. Now I'm not going to fill in all of these, but I think you kind of get the idea of where we're going with this. Let's go ahead and go like this and drag these over. Okay, so by May, I'm making 50K. But this is just going to give us an idea of, how much money we're making, where things are going. And yeah, it gives you a great outlook and a snapshot of, where your money is going. I think a lot of times we don't do this. We just know every 2 weeks we get paid 2,200 bucks, and the medical's already taken out, and we already know that our rent is 1,000. So that means I make 1,200 or whatever that is. So wrap it up, Rach. I think we did good. I think we killed it. I think we have, make sure you tap in. We got some amazing guests coming up that's going to provide a lot of value. A lot of the conversations are going to have a business and a finance basis, the foundation, because the foundation of, all business and personal is a lot of, money and financial literacy, but we're going to have a lot of experts coming in. You might be asking yourself, well, how does a UGC creator tie into running a small business? Well, maybe you need some promotion, right? Maybe you're a barbershop and you need to get your business promoted, and you're kind of like me, don't really know what to do on social media. You just post stuff and sometimes they hit off. So yeah, let's could you close us down, Rach?
Yes. All right, you guys. Thank you for tapping in to the Rich Casual Business Academy Masterclass. We will see you guys next week.